The process has really, really changed over the last 30 years. First of all, it's become much more competitive. More applications, more and more students are applying, not just in the metropolitan area, but all across the United States and, of course, internationally. So that makes a huge difference for students that are applying to colleges. Years ago, students applied to maybe 5 or 6. Now students are applying to 15, 20. I had a student last year that applied to 35, which was way too many. And I will tell somebody that's just an enormous amount of money when every application is costing $70, $75, and you're applying to 30 schools. So it's a lot, and it's a lot of work for the student. So that's the number one suggestion. Nobody should be looking at that many actually applying. So advanced planning is very important, and the time and the effort that your son or daughter puts into their application, into looking at schools, genuinely looking at schools, not just saying, oh, I'm going to apply here. Just stop and think, is that really the plan? Or again, that's what you can control and your child can control. All right, let's move on here to tell you. I told you a little bit about the amount of applications. So there you can see class of 2024, it increased with over 31%. Every year it keeps going up and up and up. So just know that going in, it's real important for you to tell your child that they are not the only one that's applying to a specific school. They're competing with thousands of other children, not to make them nervous, but it's reality, and it's the big picture, and it just is reality. When you go to visit all these schools, you can ask them how many applications increases they had. Hopefully they'll tell you, but again, you just have to be realistic. And unfortunately, our 17, 16, 17, 18-year-olds think within Montgomery County, and they don't realize how large and how many high schools are in the United States, plus abroad, that children are applying to colleges. So that's just one thing to make sure that you all know when you're applying. Okay, so let's talk about testing. Okay, and yeah, so testing policies have really changed. So parents, if you've had a child that went through the process 2-3 years ago, yes, test optional was very much the thing, and it was because of COVID. So, but I will tell you, since 2023 to 2024, it really changed. And from 2024 to now going into the 25 cycle, I would say that there are very few test optional schools anymore. There are some, don't get me wrong, there are some, but it is a very, I can't stress it enough. And I will tell you that, yes, test optional is an option. However, you're competing with children that have submitted scores. So just remember, option doesn't mean test blind. Test blind means they'll never look at it. Even if you send it in, they won't look at it. But test optional means they have the option. However, they're going to read those applications that have test scores first. It just is. So, a lot of schools did it for the COVID, and a lot of schools did it for financial reasons, because, if their applications went up, 10%, and they're getting $70 an application, that's quite a lot of money for the college. So just think about that when you're doing that. But I have always told students it is time to make sure that you either take a practice test and you study for that practice test, or you try to do well. But I don't tell every student, just don't even bother, because that's not the case anymore. There are so many schools that are requiring tests. and especially schools that are requiring tests for engineering, business. There are specific majors that test optional is not an option. So when you look at this and they say they're test optional, you just have to remember that they are going to read applications from students that have submitted tests. If it's test blind, then you have nothing to worry about. So those are big differences when you're starting to look at schools. But again, these all these notes down here that say, you know, which schools are going back, we will have even more, because the schools that haven't announced it, they will start announcing that they are going to require tests starting March, April, May, all the way until probably end of July. And you know, you don't want to all of a sudden not have your child take a test, and then she loves or he loves the school, and then you find out they're not test optional anymore. So it's just a really good idea. The children have already taken a PEAT SAT at the school. And that's probably a pretty good indicator of what they might do on the SAT. But the ACT is a test that's accepted by every school in the United States. And you know, there's no difference between the two tests as far as a school concerned. However, they're two different tests as far as test prep concerned. And that's where Anne comes in. I've never seen anybody know the test, both SAT and ACT, frontwards and backwards, and she can tell you which test would be good for your child. So again, this is something that you definitely want to make sure that you are thinking about and your child's thinking about. If you have any questions about testing, reach out to me. My email will be on the end of this presentation, and you can always email Anne as well. So just remember.
Hey, Linda, we got a question in here, and we have one from the previous slide, which I said we'll save to the end. So this parent asked, if it's test optional, but you don't submit test scores, is that negatively considered?
Okay, here, this is a great question. You have a child that has over a 4.0 GPA. They've gotten in A's in all of their classes. They've done well on their AP test, and they're not submitting a test score. Yes, it's going to negatively hurt them. Absolutely. Because remember, if they are doing that well in school, then what is the reason for not doing well on a test? I'll back that up and say, yes, test anxiety has a lot to do with it. And you can write to school and let them know that, but it doesn't explain if the child has AP scores and they're 4s and 5s, and then they just don't want to take the test. So there's a big difference there, but yes, it's going to impact them if you have stellar grades and stellar AP scores. That's when it's going to impact them. Again, I've had a lot of kids that were test optional, and last year especially, and Maryland will come out in the next couple of weeks, in fact, the end of this month. And I would say the kids that did not send in test scores that had really high GPAs, they did not get into Maryland. So it just unfortunately is. So that's the thing. There are ways to find out. You can ask me what school, but I can go into a school's data that's not online and find out how many kids submitted test scores to the school and how many they accepted without test scores. So I can tell that, but it's an individual basis. So again, you want to reach out, but it depends upon the situation, but yes, it could negatively hurt them. All right, well, let's move on. And then again, if you've got other questions, we can go forward. So I'll just go through these really quickly for you, but there is an early decision. Early decision is binding, means your child is going there. If they submit their application and they get in, they're going. You have to delete all your other applications that you submitted, and that's where they're going. The trends are up for that. Children that really want to go to a specific school, and you know, they want to go there and money is not an issue, then yes, early decision numbers are increasing. Early action is not binding. It just means the applications need to get in by depends upon the school. Some are October 15th. Majority of them are November 1st. So some schools are really using the wait list, and here's why, is because thousands and thousands of kids are applying to schools because it's increased. Instead, like I said, instead of applying to 10 schools, people are applying to 20. So that's why you would, they're using that wait list, because what's happening is they send out an admit and they say, yes, you're admitted, but then that student got admitted to every school they applied to. Now they've got to, so they're not getting the kids that come in. So now their wait lists are getting bigger. Anyway, it's kind of a balancing act, and that's just, again, something that I can go through with you individually or by email or however you would like to talk to me, but it just really does depend upon the school. Admission rates vary based on major. It's another very important factor when your child's applying to school. Engineering, business, journalism, communications. Some of the schools are very selective for those majors. And when they're very selective, they are very selective with what they're looking for. So I'll give you an example. If your child wants engineering and they haven't taken physics, and I mean the higher level physics, they might not get into their engineering class. I'm not going to say they're not. I'm just going to say that they have a better chance of getting into an engineering school with the higher level math and the higher level science questions. So they are, again, it just depends upon what it is. And again, some schools are making you do certain things. So computer science is another really big major that kids are going into. So depending upon what the major is going to depend upon, test scores again, but also what those trends are. So there are some cases that we're seeing. Some people are doing satellite campuses. Penn State has many satellite campuses. They're going to there and then they're transferring in. Florida, I understand, has a lot of that as well. Some students are starting overseas and then going in, and I say overseas, they do a study abroad their first year, and then they'll go into their campus after that, their sophomore, junior, and senior year. Sorry, lost my train of thought. So some students are offered that to a school. NYU has lots of satellite campuses, and kids are offered those, and then they will go into the main campus. So that's a trend I'm seeing happen as well. All right, let's go into the admission.
Hi, Linda. We have a quick question here on the early decision, early action. So, and I can give my 2 cents. A parent wanted to know if you have a more increased chance of admission in the early versus the late. And yes, you have an increased chance of admission, because many schools with their early decision, early action pools do admit a large percentage, if not most of their class from those pools. And then if you wait for regular deadlines, then you are competing with a larger number of people for less spots. And you can correct me if I am wrong on my math there.
You are definitely correct. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I was managing chats and stuff, but you mentioned the difference between early decision and early action.
Oh, I did. So early decision is binding, so you can't get out of it. But yes, after early decision, early action, there are some schools that offer regular decisions, and then some call it rolling admissions, which means the sooner you get your application in, the sooner you're going to get an answer. So
and certain schools, and it'll just vary. Like Boston, their early rounds are all early decision. They're all binding. If you aren't prepared to say yes to Boston University and their supreme price tag, then you have to wait for regular admission. But most schools have early action, and some schools like Rochester Institute of Technology is instituted what they're calling friendly early decision, where it is binding, but you do get a chance to review your financial packet. And if the financial packet will not work for you, you are able to step out. So as you tour your schools and build your list, you should make sure you clearly understand what your early application options offer, how committed they are and what the dates are. And also keep in mind, for some schools, if you want to compete for scholarships that are available, they have merit scholarships, presidential level, certain things. Oftentimes you absolutely have to apply by the early deadline to be considered for those grants. So it's a hard thing to keep track of, but just sort of put an asterisk by it. And as you do your tours and build your lists, make sure you know what the dates are and what the requirements are for consideration for merit aid.
Okay, thank you, Anne.
Oh, he wanted to know if there was a difference between early decision versus early action and admit rates. And that's too nitty gritty for me. Do you have a
Yeah.
thought?
Well, early decision is binding, and which means they don't have to offer you any aid whatsoever. So if a school, let's just say Northeastern, they are going to take a lot off of early decision, but they're not going to take their whole entire application pool off of that, because they have forms that you fill out and require. And so again, it depends upon so many factors, but I can't say that for every school that early decision is better. But if you are not in need of a financial package or a scholarship, and you want to make sure that your chances are very good or very high to get into a school, and the child has everything they need, like the grades and the test scores and everything else, then yes, early decision is going to be a way I would tell a student to go. But again, that's
Yeah,
just
I fall into the bucket of, it really is a financial decision. I think,
is.
some schools have only early decision or not early action, some have both, but it is a financial commitment on your part. So I think that's sort of the primary factor, because at the end of the day, as you are building your list, the number one thing for you to really think about is the affordability. You don't want to put a name on your students list and say, well, let's apply and we'll see once you get in. It's not reasonable, because there is money out there, but on the most expensive schools, even though they'll give you more money, it'll still be very expensive. So I really encourage our parents to really only pursue those schools that are going to be financially feasible, so that there aren't broken dreams and disappointments on the kids' side. So they do get into their dream school, but then you're not able to afford it. And it's hard. So I think your number one priority really does need to be the financial commitment, because colleges are so super expensive, that it's going to be what you do it. Prasad, how about I follow up with you more specifically? He's got additional questions about the early decisions. They usually get that packet to you in December if they're going to allow you to back out, but most schools don't allow you to back out. So once you are admitted, if you accept, then you have to pull your, applications from all the other schools. There are a few out there that are making it a little friendlier, but most of the time you have committed. No problem with the too many questions. I just want to be sure we move on, and I'm happy to follow up, independently. Okay, ready to move on,
Right.
Linda?
Yes. So let's
Okay.
talk about this timeline of where you should be right now. So if you've got a child and they're a sophomore, okay, so they should be right now. They've already taken the PSAT. In the spring, I would, and April, May, June, all the way through the summer, they should be taking a SAT. Come on, Linda. I have lost my train of thought there. Sorry about that. But they should be taking a diagnostic test, and they should be taking an SAT and an ACT diagnostic test, because you don't know which score would be better. And that is something that, again, I spoke about this before, that Anne is very good about that. But that's very important for a sophomore. You want to get ahead as much as you can. Here's why, and that's what's really changed. When I worked at Wooten, we told our kids, you don't have to worry about doing testing until, the fall of your junior year. Well, that's really changed, because now the kids, there's other things they have to do. And it's just really important to get this testing out of the way. So your junior year, they can focus on their grades, and they can focus on the other activities they're in. And then once the summer hits for the seniors, once they finish and they graduate from junior year, they're going into their senior year, their testing's done. And now you can move on and really focus on essays and the application and get it finished before they start their senior year. It takes a lot of stress off of you and off of their child. So this admission timeline has has changed dramatically if you had a child that graduated, 7 or 8 years ago. So the sophomores, that's what I would be doing. Take a look at their PSAT scores. They came out the end of December. If you don't have them from the school or your child didn't take them, then get them to do a diagnostic test, but make sure they do both because they're totally different exams and you just don't know which one your child's going to do better in. So for your juniors, okay, and we're walking into their spring, and hopefully they've got testing out of the way. If they haven't, they really need to focus on that now. And the reason is just what I said. You don't want them having to scramble in the fall of their senior year to try to do testing when they've got everything else going on. Your senior year parents, if this is your first child going through this process, then the senior year is, homecoming and all the other things that they do, all the sports and the senior nights and all the things that go on for the seniors during their last year at their high school. So, there's a lot going on. You want to have the testing out of the way. You want to, like I said, if you can, get those applications done. They're not going to be solely done in the summer, but a lot of them can be and take a lot of stress off students and, again, off parents. So that's kind of where your guideline is. This is a great slide. I'm not going to go through everything, but it's the timeline that you should be doing. The other thing that I will tell you that's real important is the classes that they're going to take for the next year. And Montgomery County has already had the kids fill out class schedules for what they want to take in next September. So this is another factor that's real important because, as I said, you have somebody that wants to be an engineer and they've never taken physics before, or a computer person, they've never taken computer science, the higher level of computer science, and now they can't get into the class. That's an issue. So you want to make sure that whatever classes they're going in is important as well. So a lot of kids for their senior year, they're like, yeah, I'm going to take an internship. Okay, or I'm going to do a half year, just not go to school for the other half of the year. Well, these kids are in school to learn, and that's what a college wants to see. Now, internships that are related to what they want to major in, different story. But again, that's something that you should talk about with your counselor, or again, if you want some advice, but you got to be real careful there. Dual enrollment has really changed, and a lot of kids are doing dual enrollment, and that's a good idea but again, you must remember this, parents, and you must tell your child this. They're still in high school. They don't understand the essence of homework, because in college, guess what? You don't do the work. You can't go back to the professor and say, you know what, I didn't feel good. I missed this. I missed that. Can I take it during lunch? There isn't any of that. There's a syllabus. You follow the syllabus. You take a test. You take midterms and you take finals. And if the kids don't do well in that college class, it follows them everywhere. So if your child is going to do a dual enrollment class and they get a C, okay, that's going to impact their GPA from when they start college, because again, they started it early and they're going all the way through their senior year. That C will impact their GPA. So again, I got a lot of kids that have done this and they've been real sorry. But then I've had another kids do it and they've walked into college and done very well because they're already ahead of the game. So planning the classes for the next year are important. And you want to look at them seriously. And I know this because I did it for 30 years. The kids will say, yeah, I'm going to take this, take this. And then all of a sudden they've got 5 APs on their schedule for senior year, and they have all this other work that has to get done. Well, something gives. So you got to remember, and the kids are doing this. Some parents don't even know what their kids signed up for. So again, that's very important part of this whole entire college process, to know what classes you're doing and what classes. So if you want to do business, you need to be in that highest level math, or you need to do micro and macroeconomics. So there are business 101 at Montgomery College, but there's certain things that you want to make sure that your child has if they have aspirations to go into a specific major. So again, that class schedule is up there as number one, what to do, and that's important. All right, let me move on. I could talk about that forever, but there it is. I think courses. So we talked about the courses. AP versus honors. Okay, and I'm going to tell you this as I'm going to be very blunt with you because this is what I know. I know one of the directors of admissions at Tulane University very well. I talk to him all the time. And he said, in Montgomery County, especially, an honors class is a regular class to them. If we give an extra point for that, or we give an extra, credit for that, colleges will not. So colleges give that extra credit for APs or for there are some classes that APs and IBs, and there's also some advanced classes, like there's magnet programs within specific schools. So it just depends upon what your child's taking. But QO has lots of different career paths, and they will give credit where credit is due for that class. But again, just remember, there is no regular English anymore in Montgomery County. There's no regular math classes. So everything is honors. To a school, yes, it's great for Montgomery County and it bumps that GPA up. However, they take it out. So you got to remember that colleges are recalculating the GPA. So some of them won't give an entire point for AP classes. They only give a half. So you have to find out from the colleges, do they recalculate their GPA? So a college will or will not, and that's something you need to ask them. Again, maintained grades are very good. If your child is in their junior year and they're failing something, then take it again in the summer if it's possible, or pull them out. Because if they're going to get a D on a transcript, then that's just an extra process we need to go through as a child to explain what happened and why that D happened. And believe me, it happens. I had both children of mine, both had D's on the report cards, and we had to muddle through and get through it. And I've helped lots of families, and there are reasons. And, I'm not just sitting here saying to every parent, your child has to have straight A's, but they should try to maintain B's. And that would be excellent. But just remember, AP versus honors, you've got a child that's taken every honors class and they have a 4.0 on a report card. They really don't have a 4.0 because they're not going to give weight to that. So just remember, that's yes, great inflation. I'm reading your class. You're this, and yes, it's very prevalent. So, and again, how they determine that is, again, they're going to look. This child has straight A's. They've done really well. They've taken all these AP classes. They don't take a test. They don't do well on the test. They don't report the test on the common application, and they've got straight A's and they don't turn in a test score. Then again, it's grade inflation. How could they do all those A's? And that's where that grade inflation comes in. And that's where the grade inflation comes in for going to Montgomery College early. You got to remember, they don't inflate grades. They don't. So, that's something that you got to make sure your child's ready for. Okay. Again, specific requirements. Computer science requires certain things. Business, many different schools will look at that. The Kelly School of Business in Indiana, they want to see specific classes. It's harder and harder to get into Kelly. Same thing with Maryland. So it just depends upon the school, and it depends upon what they're looking for in an applicant. Now let's talk about activities for just a minute, because so activities are great. And what I could tell you about activities is it's not a great thing to have your child belong to everything. Okay. And they're the president of this, vice president of that, this, and this. And, and it's not a matter how many clubs. I can't say this enough. It is a matter of consistency and longevity. Have they been in this club since 9th grade and they've continued till their 12th grade and they've moved up? Maybe they started as a club member maybe they took over a chair, did a committee chair, and then they went into vice president or president. That's wonderful. A lot of kids that don't do that. They can't, they run for president and they don't get it. Okay, that's okay. But maybe they were a committee chair of, homecoming or whatever that would be. But consistency, have they danced their entire life since they were 5 years old all the way through? Have they played ball? Have they done something consistently for a long time? Were they in Boy Scouts? Did they earn their gold award? Girl Scouts, same thing. What have they done? They need to stay in something for a long time. Same thing with outside of school. Or do they have a job? Have they been consistently working? Great. Do they do babysitting? What do they do? These are all, everybody thinks they need to go out and get these very impressive activities. And if they have that opportunity, great. But consistency, longevity, being in something is very important. I can pick up a transcript and I can look at it and say, oh, they love humanities, or oh, they love math, or they love science. I can just tell exactly by looking at a transcript, but it doesn't tell me anything about those activities. On the Common App, you get 10. That's it. You don't get 20, you get 10. And they should be the 10 best ones that they've done. And they've done the 10 consistent ones they've done, longevity. So again, those are really important parts of the application. And I just can't say it enough. It's not a matter of how many, it's a matter of what it is. So that just kind of tells you a little bit about that. All right, we talked about admissions and extracurricular. I think we can go to that slide, Anne. Okay. And again, your plan should be specific, which test is best, compare them equally. And should you go test optional, again, I'm happy to talk to parents about that. I do think it depends upon the school, and I think it depends upon your child. So there are definitely options for going test optional. There are incidences that they're out there. So if you've got a child and they're not a good tester, just reach out to me. I'm happy to answer your questions. Okay. Extracurriculars and build credentials. This is what I said. Follow your heart. Be passionate about something. Giving back to your community. Okay. Another wonderful things that schools like to see. Get a job, an internship in the field of their interest. And that's, again, I talked about that before. It's very important. Take summer classes to make up poor grades, and developing character. So you're going to hear this a lot. It's a lot of, it's one of those catchphrases that colleges are grabbing onto. We want a student that has built character. And everybody's like, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, building character is, again, giving back, doing something for others, making the student understand what's going on in the world. Do they listen to podcasts? Do they read a newspaper? All of these other wonderful things that can build their character and their leadership skills. I don't want to be president of every club. There's other ways to do it. So very important. And I would say that the extracurriculars, like I said just a few minutes ago, are becoming more and more important in an application. All right, school factors. So there are many different college types. I try to tell my kids when I meet with a family early on, you can't just knock out a liberal arts school because they're you think they're not for everybody. Well, there are 62% of our CEOs in the country that went to a liberal arts school. So there are a lot of universities that have a liberal arts program, and they're unique. I personally am a fan of liberal arts, but I tell families, please just go see one, right? Just understand what a liberal arts school is before you just say, nope, you're not going there. And then, of course, we all know what a university is. We all know what a community college is. And then there's specialized schools, art schools, and some universities have specific schools within them. Like Anne's daughter goes to a school which has a specific art program within the university, which she had to do a portfolio for. Same thing with theater and a musical instrument. They have specific schools within the school, but the kids have to do something to get into that. So, but there's also specialized schools, again, religion related, just there's many different ones. There's vocational schools as well, and there's some really good ones out there, which I have to tell you, my son did that and he did very well. So there's a lot of options. It's not just one. So check them all out. Okay, and then let's get down to this next slide about affordability. We talked about this before. This is primary, mom and dad, primary, okay, because as Ann said, you let them apply to all of these schools, and I cannot tell you how often this happens all the time. And the child applies to a school in California, you get the tuition bill, or you know how much it's going to be, and the cost is 80,000, and that doesn't even include the cost to bring them on an airplane back and forth. And you're like, I'm glad you got into Berkeley, but you can't go there. So you need to have that conversation with them first. When I teach my class, it's the very first thing I talk to them about. Have you had the money talk with mom and dad? Because if you haven't, you need to go home and have it now, because they need to understand what loans are. Okay, because a lot of kids don't understand what a loan is, and you have to understand what federal funding is, because they are all loans. So merit money, you cannot count on merit money, because again, some schools only have so many merit scholarships, and then you can't count on a scholarship that you got millions of kids applying for, like the Coca-Cola scholarship. So you have to primary take into affordability, number one factor. Number two, what kind of school do they want? Do they want a big school? Do they want it in the city? Do they want to be in the middle of nowhere? Do they want to be in a school that is a big number 10? Do they want a specific area? Do they want warm weather? What do they want? So this is important. I sat down with a student last year, and she picked schools that were all far away. And the very first thing I said is, okay, well, you know that you're going to need an airplane ticket to get to the school home and back. And she goes, yeah, but it's only a 7-hour ride. And I was like, yeah, you're 7 hours for mom and dad to go get you, and then 7 hours to come back home, and then 7 hours to go back down, and their mom and dad to go home again. So it's a lot of traveling, especially in a short amount of time. So you have to know that going in. Some students, my daughter, for example, did not want to go 7 hours away from home. So she stayed pretty close. And that was because she wanted to come home and sleep in her own bed for, at times. So you have to take that into consideration. And mom and dad, you have to take it into consideration, because 9 times out of 10, you're the one doing the driving or flying or whatever it is that you need to do. So that's a big thing that you just have to discuss. So type, school, size, location, distance, weather. And again, with that location comes in a lot of things, city, school, exactly what exactly do they want? I'm going to throw in something else, and that is if your child likes it. So you can go to a school and the child goes, it's okay. Would you go here? No. Then why are we applying? If you're not going to go, and if you got in, you would never go, no matter if it was the only school you ever applied to and were accepted to, and you wouldn't go, then why are we applying? So something to think about, mom and dad. Again, you can go on all the school trips you want, and they're going to go, no, I don't really like that school. Then take them off the list, right? Start with a bigger list and then condense it as you go and visit and as you look into the school. You have your child do a online tour first to see if they really like what they're seeing. And please, I beg you, mom and dad, don't go by what everybody else tells you, because you could have a student at one school that absolutely loves it, and your child goes there and absolutely hates it. So you really do have to factor in what your child likes. Their majors that they're doing. There's some schools that have some really great extracurricular offerings. One school that a specific student wanted, he was really interested in race cars, and we found out that they had a Formula One club. So that was really wonderful for him. So again, look into everything, because this is the next 4 years of their life. and they didn't get to choose what high school they got to go to. So this is the time for everybody to sit down and have that really nice conversation, and have it now. Okay. A balanced and a college list. Again, they used to call them safeties, reaches, and or reaches, sorry, targets and safeties. That was the terminology that had been used for years and years and years. I have to get used to this new uh, vocabulary and how they're using it. But probable means pretty much they're probably going to get in. They have the GPA, they have a test score, they have good activities, they're within their distance of their average GPA that they take. So that's a probable score. And if your child has a Naviance account, there's something called uh, a like a comparison, and you can do the comparison of kids that applied to that school from their high school, and did they get in. So again, there's ways to find out if schools are safeties. Possible means, again, they've got it, but it's a selective school, so they're only going to take so many. How many students are they taking? It's possible, but it's not guaranteed. It's a target. And then you've got the schools that are unlikely. And and when I sit down with a student and they have a Ivy League on their list, and I tell them, you have to, I don't care who you are, you could have had your parents' name on the building, and you're gonna every Ivy League is so selective. The percentage rate for Harvard last year was 3.5% of, I think it was 72,000 applications they got into. So you have to assume that you have to go with that's a reach school, and the chances are that you might not get in. So again, look at that very closely. As again, you don't want your child to apply to 10 reach unlikely schools and only have 2 or 3 balanced, possible or probable. I like to tell families right now, I tell kids to 15 should be the top that you're going to apply to. That's really a lot. Anywhere between, 8, 10, 12, that's a pretty good amount, but a lot of them should be probables. Part of them should be possibles, but they shouldn't have any more than 2 or 3 reach schools on that list, because again, they're just hard. One other factor to consider, they take a lot of work. UVA had 4 essays on their application last year. So it's a lot of work to fill out these applications and to do all the essays that are involved with them. So just something, again, to think about when you're sitting down and looking at a list and making a list. All right, college visits, move on to that. Again, spend the time, go look at all the schools, either in person and online. Do the online first. If it's a school that they really want to go to, then great. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't encourage somebody to, go to a school or go to a place, and if it's going to be an inconvenience or a financial situation, to go and look at all these schools, and go look at 20 and 30 schools. I'm not an advocate for that. But if you have the opportunity, especially if you've got a child and they're in their sophomore year, and during spring break, you're going to be in certain areas, like you're going to be in Pennsylvania and there's 5 colleges that are really, really close, go see them. Go show a child what a school is that only has 3,000 or 4,000 students. Go to a school that's got 20,000. Even if it's a school that your child's not going to go to, just go see it. Put them on a college campus now as a sophomore, and go see it. And then the same thing, I recommend going, if you live in Montgomery County area and you can go on a day they're off, wonderful, go. There's lots of schools within our area that you could get to within an hour, 2 hours. Go see them, and then base it off of what you see. Like, I took my daughter to a lot of schools, and she wouldn't even get out of the car at some of them. She's like, I have no desire to go to. I was like, okay, so get that out of the way now, go look. And then when you narrow that list down, then make a decision how many of those you're going to go to. But it's really important to go on college visits. I just can't stress that enough. Okay. Again, video tours. Most of this I talked about. If you have questions about this slide, I can go on. Oh, document everything. Well, the kids have, you know, you can take pictures of everything. Have them take a picture. That way they can go back to you and, oh yeah, I remember that. Or that was something I really liked about this school. Well, a lot of colleges will ask you, why do you want to come here? They got a picture of something that really stood out to them. They might be able to talk about that in their essays. So again, things to think about when you're visiting. Look at when you go to visit a school, pick up their newspaper, look at it, see what's going on. These are all really important things when you start doing college visits. Get the business card of whoever it is that reads applications for the state of Maryland. Talk to them. If they're there on campus, ask them questions. How many are here from the state of Maryland? These are all things that are really important to do. And I saw that question about the admission staff. Absolutely, it is the admission staff. If you are lucky enough to get a tour of, say, the engineering department, and there's an academic dean of the engineering department, and you happen to meet them, absolutely get the business card, especially if somebody spent time with your son or your daughter on a campus and giving them a tour, then it's a great idea to send a thank you note. Thank you for spending time with me. It just, the more you can find out about a school, the better off everybody's going to be. Anne, do you want to add into that?
Yeah, I was just going to pop in. We tortured my own child with tours to all the schools she was going to consider. And it was really helpful because some schools came off, other schools got reordered as to what the priority was. And because she was, this won't pertain to everybody, but if you have a child that's interested in engineering, or my child was interested in graphic design, so we were interested in the arts department, you can always reach out. There's always general tours. You can go and you sign up, they take the groups around, they show you the dorms, they show you the student union, you wave at the library. Sometimes you get lucky enough to go inside. Tours will vary in how much detail they give you. But we always reached out to the arts department and asked if there was somebody we could meet with. And we got some really great contacts that way, got some really great tours, a lot of personalized information. So if your child is interested in the engineering, or they're interested in the biology program, or they're interested in the comp sci, there's no harm in reaching out to see if somebody could see you while you're also in the area. So and personal interest is one of the few things you can control in the application process. And so that's following up with the contacts and getting those cards and sending those thank you notes. And because if your child really wants that school, give that admissions officer a face to put with that packet, and don't ask questions that can be answered by the website. Go in there and think about questions that really matter to you. And the more you visit schools, the more you'll realize what the differences are and what matters. And so it's about building experience. So starting with schools that nobody's interested in, just to see what a big school is like or a little school is like, can be super helpful in forming your priorities and what questions to ask and how to behave. So it's just another tip there on visits, is that you can always reach out and see if you can get a little bit more specialized tour if your child is very keen on a very particular thing. If your child is more interested in the general stuff, it's not a huge deal. But as we talked about, bigger schools and smaller schools and more selective schools, my child's at a school that has a very generous admission rate, but the arts program has a 20% admission rate. It's not very generous. So as you look at those programs, if you are competing for a spot in one of those selective programs, you want to, do all you can to put your child on the radar and to get them in there to make sure it's going to be a good fit for them. Because at the end of the day, it's a very big investment. And the more research you can do ahead of time and the more knowledge you have making the decision, the more likely the outcomes will be positive for everybody involved.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Anne. All right. We talked a little bit about this before, application types and deadlines. So we kind of single choice early action. Stanford has single choice early action. Notre Dame does. There's some schools that you can only apply to them early action. Single choice. You can't apply to any other school that has early action if you're choosing them. That is a confusing admission decision program. You can ask me about that later. Majority of the schools are going to have, their application types. I'd say the coalition application used to be very big because Maryland was the only school that you had to apply on the coalition application. It was a horrible application. I'm understanding that They're no longer going to have it out there by 2026 because it has really just nobody's using it. So the common application is during my class, the students fill it out front, everything, every page, we fill it out. We work on our essays, but that common application is pretty much the one. There are schools, the California schools has their own application. You don't have a choice. Georgetown has its own application, but I'd say the majority of the schools are going to be on the Common App. A lot of schools have their own individual school application. Apply Texas, you can use that for all of the Texas schools and check them off which one you want to apply to. HBCUs have also their own application. So it just depends upon the school, but I would, when you go visit, ask them. But those are the ones off the top of my head that if you want California schools, it's a whole different application process, completely different. There is another form that I'm going to talk about here because it is a form that is coming. There used to be only 2 or 3 schools that required it when I worked at Wooten. And again, I retired in 2018. So we're talking a few years here. But now there's a new form that is called a self-reported academic record, a SAR. And there are schools that require that form. And it's not, I'm going to be blunt, it's not an easy form to fill out. So it's got a lot of questions on there that the kids probably wouldn't understand how to answer. Anyway, it's a SAR report. We do that in the class, but just make sure that you ask them, or do you require a student self-reported academic record? Lots of schools are going to that now, which means the student will actually fill out their grade report and they will look at the transcript. The school still wants the transcript, but when they admit a student after filling out that SAR report, I'll back up and give you an example. If you apply to Penn State or Pittsburgh, they want that SAR report and you fill it out and you send it in and they accept your child. And then they're going to come back and ask for an official transcript from the high school, and they will make sure that what your child wrote down on this self-reported academic record and what the school has as your transcript, that they match. So just something to keep in mind. But yes, a lot of schools are going to this. So just keep that in mind. It's another form that your child's going to have to fill out. Probably takes almost an hour. It's not an easy form. Okay, single choice, we talked about that. Early action, there's 2 choices for early decision. Early decision 1 is most of the time it's November 1st. Maybe your child falls in love with the school after they've gotten all their applications in and now they want to do early decision 2. So those dates are normally in January. Priority means that if you send it in by their priority date, you're considered for merit scholarships. And then rolling admissions is you send it out and you will get your answer right away. August 1st, the common application opens. And let me just explain this. The common application, your child can go in and make an account now and put in their name and their address and all that stuff. But on August 1st, all of the schools have their application that opens. So there is a common application, which is one application, form, address, name, all of that great stuff. Then on the school side, they have their specific application. So there's 2 different parts of the Common App. The Common App school part of the Common App opens on August 1st. That's why when I work with kids, I like to have them do it in August 1st. Then we just get it all done. But a lot of families can go in and you can go in and add your name and address and your parents' information. But you can't put any of your high school information in. You can put your activities in. One of the activities section is probably the section that I feel more passionate about because every child is different and how they explain those activities really is crucial. So I'll just say that. So anyway, those are deadlines. October 15th is the first ED deadline. November 1st is most applications. Maryland, if you live in the state of Maryland and you don't apply by November 1st, chances of getting admitted are very slim. they take all of the Maryland applicants first, and that deadline's November 1. And then January 1 is most of the regular decisions. Again, some are January 5th and February 1st, and it just really depends. But all of that is written, all of their important dates are on their website. So, you just have to keep on top of it. That's all. All right. Let's see, what's in this application. If you've never been through this process before, again, they want their high school information, how many kids are in the high school, what's their GPA, what's, is it weighted, unweighted, how many kids are in the senior class. All of those things are asked for. Their activities, again, they get 10. Their honors, a lot of kids don't even know they have honors until they sit in the class with me. I'm like, so are you, or how many APs have you taken? Like, there are different honors. So they get 5 honors, and then their personal is their recommendations, their essays, all of that information that goes in there. So that's the gist, but the GPA course rigor is the biggest, and that's the one that they're going to look at first. So yeah, that's how they do it. They pull that transcript or that self-reported academic record and look at the course rigor. They look at the high school that your child's in, and they say, okay, this child is in the top 10%, top 15, top 20, and that's what they're looking for. Every high school must send in a high school profile, and that high school profile will give them a lot of information about what the average student GPA is, how many kids are in the senior class, etc. So that's what the colleges are looking for first and foremost. So that's kind of where that is. All right, I could talk college all day long, but we are on a time limit. I know you parents are like trying to take all of this in and comprehend it all, especially if you've never had a child go to college before. And there's a lot to it. So this is just kind of an overview. And again, I appreciate Anne and Jeremy doing these seminars because, again, it gets parents thinking, students thinking, and then you can reach out and ask questions. Finances, again, money talk. Please, please, please have a money talk with your child. Every school, every single college, university, you name it, has something on their website called a net calculator. So you can go into the net price calculator and you can find out how much. They'll ask you to enter your income, and they'll ask you to enter your assets, that type of thing. And then it will come back and tell you that based on the information that you've inputted, this is how much the price tag will be. And then the federal student aid estimator, that's on the federal aid site. And we can go through all those. There's financial forms that are required. If you're applying to a school, a very selective school, they require the CSS profile, which will take you quite a while to fill out. I'd say, well, Anne and Jeremy had to fill one out. I've done them for some families, but they're time consuming. I would say at least 2 hours. But that's a form that parents fill out, not your child. So, and we talked about scholarships. First thing I would do when we walk on that campus is ask them, what scholarships, merit scholarships does the school offer? They'll tell you, well, we're need, we're need-based. Well, if they're need-based, that's based on financial need. And that is based on that CSS profile that they're going to ask you to complete. So if they're need-based, that means there are no scholarships. To apply into Cornell, there are no merit scholarships because everybody would deserve one. So there aren't any. So make sure that you ask, what merit scholarships are available through the school. Merit scholarships, you don't have to pay back. Loans, obviously, you have to pay back. Scholarship types, there's a lot of schools that, or a lot of communities based organizations that will give a scholarship. There's athletic scholarships. There's some really interesting scholarships that are available. It's just time consuming. And again, that's where this do things now for your child, because scholarships are offered for you. Some juniors can even be offered some scholarships. Depending upon the career center at your child's school. They could have some of these scholarships available. And I would encourage your child to go into the College Career Center and say what merit scholarships are out there. There's some really great sites that are online that you can go in and look. Just be careful of scams, but there's a lot of employers will offer. So like Zeneca, AstraZeneca, they have scholarships if you're an employee there, they give scholarships to students as well. So again, there's many different scholarship types. But again, federal student aid is not based on merit, it's based on income, and it's all a loan. So, okay. All right. And then resources. Let's see. Here's some great websites. Jeremy and I have come up with some really great resources for you and some websites. And after this presentation, Jeremy has your email of who attended, and he will send you a resource list. And the presentation is also recorded for you. So if you want to go back and listen, you can do that as well. So it's, there are a lot of resources out there. And again, we'll provide you with whatever you need. Okay, questions and answers. I see everybody, and you can read them to me, or because I can't see all of them.
Okay. Well, I did not get any. Oh, I can scroll too. Sorry, folks. I didn't even know it worked that way. Okay. So we've kind of gotten through this one. Okay, good. We're at questions and answers. Perfect. So we had the early one we had that I skipped was how many colleges should be on your list, but I think we briefly covered it in the probable possible. Yeah, my daughter was 11 at the end of the day. The list started much heavier, but I was targeting somewhere in the 8 to 12 range. 11 was a lot. You have to understand that, while the Common App will have one general essay, most of these schools will have short answer questions. Some will have a secondary essay. If you're applying for any scholarships, there's another essay. And on top of that, she had an art portfolio that she had to submit for everything. And don't even get me started on how unfair I think all that is, but that's fine. The amount of work she had to do to get an application done was crazy. So sure, you maximize your chances at getting into schools by applying to a ton, but you're also increasing the workload so much. And at a certain point, it does become very difficult. And a few colleges actually fell off our list when we got to that stage. And there was a secondary essay and it said, why do you want to go here? And she went in her room and she came back an hour later and she's like, I can't come up with anything. I said, well, that tells you something, doesn't it? So try to do 2 at least in every category, and I agree with Linda. You reach it, the unlikelies, the ones that emit less than 5%. It's very tough. So you don't want your list to be most of those, because honestly, disappointment will likely follow, because, when you're talking about tens of thousands of applications and 4% admission rate, your child is competing with children who have just the same grades and test scores and extracurriculars and all that other good stuff out there. But try to keep it reasonable and really do try. I know some student parents aren't going to be able to get everywhere. But the visiting is so important. It will change their minds about schools. We had some that we really loved, or she really loved virtually, but once she set foot on campus, no, that wasn't it. And other ones that didn't seem so great, but then once she was there, realized, that just something hadn't been communicated. So that's all real important too. And so Susie, Susie had a question. And maybe it got answered by a parent.
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead.
I was
Go ahead, Susie.
Ask because Linda had mentioned that the admissions office will get schools' profile. So, for example, if they got profile of Wooten High School, and your student might have 4.0 GPA from Wooten High School, but his ranking or his percentile from that school, because it's such a strong academic school, that compared to other students, his GPA might not be as high compared to the other students in the class, graduating class. So I just wanted to know, does that mean, depending on what school you come from, do you get penalized for sort of being a more stronger academic school rather than, so like less highly ranked school?
So here, I cannot tell you how many times I got that question when I worked at Wooten. They were like, well, I would have been better off sending them to, Damascus rather than Wooten or whatever. But you have to remember that when you look at that school profile, it doesn't always just say ranking. It tells them how many kids got A or got fives on their AP exams. It tells them, there's a lot to that school profile it's there. Not every school offers every AP class. So Whitman does, Churchill does, but even Wooten doesn't. So we don't offer every single one of them. So there's some like they just don't. We don't have the room to accommodate that. So, and again, we don't have IB classes. At least at Wooten, we didn't have any specialty classes, that type of thing. So they're looking at that profile from that school within the school limits. So yes, it will say to them, you've got 18% of your kids that have a 4.5 and above. And that means 18% of 560 kids. That's why how many kids are in a class makes a difference. So that school profile determines a lot, but every school profile is different. So Rockville is going to look totally different than a Wooten or a WJ or a Quince Orchard or a Northwest. They're all very different just because of the things they offer. So, and again, that's where all the other things come in play, the activities, the longevity, the character of a student, how they write their essay, all of that is a factor. I mean, I had the best of the best. They were, number 2 or 3 out of the student, at Wooten, and some of them didn't have any activities whatsoever, none. Or they did, but they were in a club for a month or a year, and then they went to another club. So you can't categorize just by a number. And that's why I tried to say character counts, and it really does. And it comes through a lot on the application. But yes, course rigor is important, and how they see that course rigor is on the profile, because on the profile it tells them what APs they offer, how many APs, if they're an IB school, what IBs they offer, if they're QO, and what kind of specialty program they have. And they have stuff that Wooten doesn't have, and they're all different. So you can't say, well, my style's penalized because I go to Wooten. They're not. It's what they did at Wooten. So, but every profile in every school requires it. So every college, there's not a college out there that doesn't want that school profile.
And Linda, I have one more question regarding AP courses. So if my child has been taking AP courses since freshman year, and he had consistently taking AP courses, like 2 AP courses each year, and senior year, he decides he didn't want to take any more AP courses, would that look badly on the application when they look at the transcript?
Email me. I don't want to sound out and say, no, yes. Email me, and then I can ask you continuous questions to find out more. So I don't want to.
Yeah, because it matters which courses he's taken and what major he's interested in, and that sort of thing. Because there could be many interpretations for what courses you should notch and what order you should go in. I have a lot of students that struggle in math, and there's a big question: do I torture my child with pre-calculus, or do we go into AP Stat? You need 4 years of math in Maryland, and you just need to sort of check at the schools you're thinking about, which math do they require? Most schools require 4 years of math, but the only specific ones they require are algebra 1, 2, and geometry. But some will say that 4th year has to be an algebra-centric course. So I think it's probably just a matter of what he's taken and what his pathway is. And this may not be super right, but I know locally it matters more where your fish is in your little sea when we're talking about Maryland state schools like UMD. Would that be correct, Linda, to say, like,
yes,
if you're
absolutely.
at Poolesville or you're at Richard Montgomery and you have the IB programs to commit with and the magnet programs to compete with, it matters more locally than it does to say if you're applying to an out-of-state university or a private college.
Gotcha.
So I think that's the one place where he falls in the Wooten chain, would maybe, you know, have some effect. But she is right. Every student is different, and they are putting their class together, and they are looking for specific things. So we see kids that on paper look much more impressive than another student, and that other student will get in and that student won't. And what was it that they saw? Who knows? But they were looking for something, and that student had it, and that's what did it. So
and Susie, I will tell you though that they're looking at a trend up. So they're looking at, you know, what you started 9th grade and how you're trending up. So again, I can go through this, but just for anybody else, you know, if they haven't never taken an AP, then they're, you know, and they're only taking honors, then got to remember that honors are just a regular class. So it's not, you got to challenge yourself somewhere, right? But then you've got a child that's taken a lot of APs, and then their senior year, they dropped off. And I'd be like, if that was me and I was reading for Clemson, I'd go, why? So it would put that red flag up there for me. But again, that's something I would have to talk to you and your student about and just say, okay, where are you headed? You know, if so, but yes, when you go to a college, ask them, what are you looking for in grades? And they'll tell you, trend up. So
yeah, we always want upward. And junior year is going to be the highlight year, because honestly, if you apply early or priority, you know, you'll have the classes that you're taking senior year there, but your performance in them won't really come out. So we want to make sure junior year is as good as or better than sophomore year. And if there was any bumpy years, freshman or sophomore, they can excuse that. There's transitions, there's socio emotional growth, there's all kinds of stuff. But by junior year, kids should be settled into the things that are challenging them. They should have found their passions, and they should be being successful in the levels they've set for themselves. And the upward trend is super important. So if you are moving through sophomore, junior year, and you are sensing a downward trend in any subject areas for your kids, that is way more important than SATs or ACTs, frankly. I'm going to tell you that's something you really want to jump on and make sure that gets righted in time for college applications. Okay, any other questions out there?
Okay, all right.
Well, we had some active chats, and we had some parental help in there, so that was really great. You know, thank you everyone for bearing with our technical difficulties. As someone I mentioned in the chat, Jeremy does send a follow-up out with emails and slides. The videos are always available on our website. If you have any questions, I'm available, Linda's available, Jeremy's available. We're really happy that you were able to spend time with us tonight. We hope you found it useful and helpful. Hope it answered more questions than it spurred, but I hope it did spur some questions. So now you can kind of go out there and know what you have to go after and figure out. Okay, well, I'm gonna call, oh, wait, we got some stuff in the chat. They're probably just thank yous.
Okay.
Let's make sure. Yep, thank you. Okay, good. Appreciate it, everyone. Have a great night.
You.
We're going to sign off. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Okay, good night.